G'day guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from Belgium. This is spoken in the Flemish and French language with English subs, released in the year 2014, directed by Jonas Govitz, and this movie is called Cub. So Cub is about the Cub Scouts. You've got this Cub troop that are about to go camping for a few days in the woods, and the main character is Sam. Sam is a very troubled child. He's had a very traumatic background, so the Cub Scout leaders decided to include him to allow him to feel like a child and enjoy life as a child. So this backfires because on this camping trip, these scout leaders decide to make up a story. Now this story is to prove to kids that they don't have to be worried about the monster under the bed, basically giving them the courage to do something. And so the story consists of Kai, who is supposed to live in the woods. He's a boy who transforms into a werewolf at night, and he picks off unsuspecting victims. So the scout leaders say to the troop, "Are we cowards or are we courageous?" And they say, "We're courageous, we're going to fight the werewolf." So just adding a little bit of fun to this trip. But this is not so for Sam. Sam believes that Kai is really out there. Now Sam has been constantly bullied by the Cubs and also one of the Cub Scout leaders, so he already doesn't fit in, but he believes that Kai really exists and he starts to become obsessed with this, and when bad things start to happen within this troop, he blames Kai. So everyone else thinks that Sam is losing his mind and Sam is dangerous, whereas Sam thinks the danger comes from a completely different source. So whether or not that is the case is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Cub. This is a movie that does have a lot of problems, but ultimately I actually enjoyed myself because it doesn't take itself too seriously, so you can kind of forgive the issues that the film has. To start off with, I will say that I really love the setting. I love the woodland. I thought it was very eerie, and I thought there was a certain sense of isolation. So stuff that was bad that was going to happen, the help was a long way away. So a lot of these films you kind of question as to why didn't they go for help. But in this movie, in such an isolated environment, you can understand why they didn't go for help. So it's kind of like they have to stand and they have to fight. So that already adds a very scary element to the film. And although the movie isn't really scary, I just thought it had a certain eeriness to it that I really appreciated. I thought the idea of Cub Scouts was a good idea, and the idea of bullying was a good idea as well, although none of those opportunities are really taken. But I love the fact that this is centered more around kids. And initially I thought, a horror movie centered around kids that wasn't going to be very, of a high impact, and it wasn't going to be a very nasty film, but I was surprised by how violent this movie actually gets. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but there is one scene in particular that I absolutely loved involving a truck. That's all I'm going to say, but I will say that Hollywood wouldn't dare to go as far as they did in this film. So it does show you the difference between European horror and Hollywood horror in the lengths that they're willing to go. So I thought this movie showed a lot of balls, and I wasn't expecting that. So I thought the ending, the last quarter of the film goes very, very nasty, and I really love the way that it finished because it does save the problems that the movie has throughout the first half of the film. And the very end, it's very generic. The film does follow a very similar formula, but I thought it ended very well. And as I said, it ended in a very, very dark way. And that's something that will catch a lot of people by surprise. And if you're like me and you like your horror films a little bit more hardcore, then this movie is definitely for you. Now, my problems with the movie is that it doesn't really... you have to have a suspension of disbelief. Now, yes, it is a fun film and it's not taking itself seriously, but there are moments in the film that are a little bit silly. And you think to yourself, how on earth could that have happened? But if you're prepared to look, to push that aside, then you won't notice it as much. But luckily the film does have a very light-hearted approach, so you can kind of forgive that. It also takes a very long time to get going. Now, what I mean by that is that because it's so generic and it does become a very tame sort of horror film, and it's not till the end where it really kicks into another level. But in that moment where it's not really that nasty, you feel to yourself, you've seen it all before, and it's just going through the motions. It just doesn't feel like it's elevating itself. It doesn't feel like it's promising it to go to great lengths. So when the great lengths start to happen and it starts to kick up a notch, you're very surprised. But a good film would have that very slow build-up and a very dreary build-up, but it would always have that moment of promising something bigger. But because that never really promises that, when it kicks into another level, you're so surprised that you think, okay, I'm watching a different film here, because the first half of the film didn't really match it. It was kind of like a contradiction, and that to me was a big problem. So the characters were pretty much non-existent. Sam was the most interesting character, but you never care about what happens to him. So it's more a case of wanting to see these people die in horrible ways, as opposed to really connecting with them. I thought there was an opportunity to really have a social commentary on bullying that I thought would have been a nice little inclusion, but it never goes there. So it always has all these opportunities hanging around, but it never really takes it. So the last quarter of the film really helps it, but apart from that, it really, as it didn't take advantage of the great setting. The scary set pieces are pretty much non-existent. It was not really a scary film. It's just a movie that you see and you're just waiting for something that you believe is not going to come, but when it does come, you think to yourself, okay, well, that was worth it, but it's still not a great film. So overall, for Cub, I thought it looked very good. I love the way that it kicked into a different sort of mood at the end, but it does have a few more problems than it does positives, and as a result of that, I'm only going to give it 2.5 stars. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.